Hello, and welcome to this episode of the Reset Podcast. I'm your host, Lauren Leo. Each episode, I bring on a different business leader who's doing great and amazing things. This is part of my 29 Days of Magic series, where I interview awesome Black women every single day. Today, I am super excited to have Andrea Bibbs, who is the founder of the ACB Group. She has an incredible career story. It's going to be a great conversation. Take a listen. Hey, Andrea, how are you?
I'm good. How are you? Thank you for having me.
Finally, it only
I
took
know.
3 years to get you to do this.
I know. But look,
But
we made it happen. We made it
yes,
happen, and I believe at the right time. So,
exactly. Right time, right place for everything. And
yes,
since
yes.
you are an avid listener and commenter on the podcast, you know how this works. First question, always the same. Answers, always interesting and hilarious. Yours, I'm sure, will be no different. Andrea, what was your first job?
My first job technically was a newspaper girl. So I delivered the Penny Saver. So I grew up in Canada. So I think they had the Penny Saver in the US as
Yeah, we
well.
used to get when we were kids.
Yeah, so I delivered that. And then I'd say like my first real job with like bigger paycheck was I was working at a snack food counter at a hockey rink, like so Canadian.
I was just, this is so Canadian. My
Yes,
goodness.
yes.
Like,
Those were my like what I consider my two first jobs.
wow. Okay. So, all right. So you're living in Canada.
Mhm.
You have the penny saver, and then you're working at the hockey side of the house.
Right.
How do we go from that to having this conversation with me? What was that career journey like?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, like, so I always had an affinity and love of sports. And so I actually like ran track. My brother played hockey. So I guess that was, maybe why I was ended up in the hockey rink because he was there like many days at 5 in the morning. So it was easy for me to just go as well. Um, but really I ran track and played basketball and thought I was going to have this career as an athlete. But as I kind of got towards the end of high school, kind of realized, and especially as a female athlete, that it may not take me as far. And to be honest, I was a little burnt out and always had this love of writing and journalism. I was obsessed with like fashion television. I was obsessed with music. So subscribed to every different type of magazine there was, but just never thought there could be a career for me in that. And it was actually in my last year of high school, one of my guidance counselors reached out to me. So we had an opportunity to do like basically an internship in high school for a semester. And I had said that I wanted to do an accounting internship just because I was getting the highest grades in accounting. And, she called me in and she's like, "Are you sure?" She's like, "You don't really seem like the accountant type." She's like, "You're just so much more creative than that." And so she actually gave me the idea. She's like, "Why don't you try like something in entertainment or something like that?" And she's like, "You have the whole rest of your life to try accounting, but use this time to try something that you actually like." And so that was really like the beginning of the journey. So I got an internship at a kind of big Canadian wire service that provided news and entertainment stories to like radio stations across the country. And what I realized in that internship was that I did not love radio, but I loved, getting the information first, like getting the press kits from, the studios and getting CDs first and that sort of thing. So I loved that part of it. And that really changed the whole trajectory of my career and like sort of what I wanted to do. So then after that, I applied for the radio and television program at one of the top schools in Canada and also applied to some schools in the US because I was still dabbling and thinking about maybe running track, and ended up going with the school in Toronto, which was called Ryerson, which is now Toronto Metropolitan University. And that really shaped kind of where I am now.
Wow. And so you start from there, and then what have you been up to all these years?
Yeah. Um, so really, while I was at Ryerson, I ended up getting an internship at CNN in Atlanta. CNN Sports Illustrated. So that was like a really funny story because I'd come to Atlanta to visit some family and went on a tour. And so this was like kind of the year before my senior year, and ended up talking to the tour guide, and he was like, hey, we have internships here. And I just, even though I'd done internships in Toronto, I just felt like CNN was like the flagship, like just the top echelon. And I just didn't even think that they had internships. And so anyways, he put the bug in my ear, and I kind of took the paper application home and
Paper application. Wow.
Paper application. And I actually brought it back. So I was part of like the Caribbean and African Student Association, and we were actually having a bus trip from Toronto to Atlanta in spring break.
Oh my God, that sounds awful.
Yeah.
Toronto to Atlanta?
Oh yeah, I don't even remember that bus trip. Like I must have like blacked it out. I remember
that sounds like a nightmare.
Oh yeah, I think about that now. I'm like, what? But I mean, it must have been fun because it was, with a lot of our friends and everything like that. And so, anyways, we came down, and I said, you know what, we're coming to Atlanta in February, so I'll, finish my application. And so, honestly, like I was finishing my application on the bus and in the hotels. Like, so we'd come home from parties, I'd be like finishing my essay, writing it down,
by hand back in those days.
By hand, right? This is like the late 90s, and so I ended up. We went to CNN for a tour, and I handed it in. And, by just really like God, I ended up getting a call back. And long story short, I ended up interning there the summer before my senior year, which was huge because, this business is really about relationships. I didn't know anybody. And when I interned, I quickly realized most people did. Most people were like, yeah, my uncle is the CFO, or my, or my dad's friend, is the president of this. And so I quickly started understanding like, okay, this is how the business works. But anyways, that internship really catapulted me. I went back to Canada, finished school, and ended up working for a year at a startup, and then got a call back from my internship coordinator, who I was still keeping in touch with, and who told me someone was looking for, someone like an entry-level position, and thought about me. And I applied, didn't get that job, but then someone else remembered me from my internship, and that's sort of the rest is history. He interviewed me, and I ended up coming back down, which was like, honestly, like a miracle. I just didn't think I was going to come back down, especially with my immigration issues. And it ended up working out. And that's one thing that really taught me, my first job out of school, it was very humbling too. I thought with CNN on my resume, I'm going to get a job, right, in Toronto at like one of the top TV stations. That was not the case, and so when I got this job opportunity, I was just like, yes. And I quit my job. And I was ignorant, I think, too, of just sort of like the immigration process. And so many people said to me, like, are you crazy? They're never going to sponsor you. You're entry level. They only sponsor high level people. And guess what? They ended up really, I had a manager, and he's still like, honestly, like a mentor, one of the most, influential people in my career. Like he really, pushed for me to get what I needed to get in, and and then ended up staying there for over 22 years. So the majority of my career was there at the parent company of CNN.
Wow, that's incredible. And it's also awesome that you were able to stay in a company for 20 years. I think sometimes folks are like, well, I'm just going to bounce from here to here, there, but you were able to sort of navigate your way through and probably wear a lot of different hats over the years.
Yeah. I mean, I think that the biggest thing, like, it didn't really feel like I was there for that long, just because I was doing so many different things, for the most part. And that was really the beauty of it. I was able to, raise my hand to sort of, and what I tell a lot of young people too, is that like, I often raised my hand to do the things that most people didn't want to do. But that kind of, I think, helped with my reputation of someone who was just really curious and willing to kind of try different things. And the lucky thing is a lot of those things that people didn't want to do sometimes, or oftentimes, were tied to like innovation. We're tied to like digital. We're tied to, just things that had never been done, like, integrating, some trivia, with online, or, integrating online trivia on air, right? Or even doing something like one of my first jobs was like choosing comments from like an online chat room and posting it on air, in Sports
Oh,
Tonight
wow.
on CNN, and this was like in 2001, when like convergence was like this thing that people were talking about in the future, right? And we were just like, yeah, why don't we put these comments on air? This is
Oh,
before we
wow.
had
That's,
Facebook,
that's
you
so
know?
wild. That was back that's when it started. Wow.
Yeah, and I'm just gonna say, I mean, and that was sort of the world I was living in. I was living in those chat rooms. Back in the day, there was so many. There was like MySpace, of course, but there was like, what's the one? It was like for Black people,
Black
Black
Planet.
Planet. Yeah,
Yeah.
like there was a lot of these, like no really, no video. It was just like pictures, and like really, your personality was through what you were commenting in these chat rooms, right? And so I lived in that world, and and thankfully like was able to like raise my voice about that, in some of these meetings, like, well, and especially in the sports world, there were so many like active chat rooms, and it was great to be able to like, pull some of those comments and give those folks some light. And now look at it, it's just on a whole other level now.
Wow. So after 20 years, you've now started something new.
Yeah.
So what's the thing?
Yeah. So I, like I said, I left what is now Warner Brothers Discovery last summer, and took some time and decided late last year to launch my own firm called the ACB Group. And so primarily still very early, but primarily like what I'm doing is really helping entrepreneurs, um, small businesses, but as well as like businesses that happen to be small. So I say that now, right? To really like help them with press exposure, media exposure, as well as sponsorships and strategic partnerships. So really taking a lot of my different experience over the past 20, plus years in media, and now trying to really help, brands and people that I really believe in. So it's so humbling, and it's so, it's definitely, like I was saying to you earlier, it's just a new experience, but I'm excited, it's like, so often, especially when you're in corporate for so long, we don't get a chance to really take risks. And even when I did take risks, it was within the confines of like the safe corporate world. And so now, betting on myself and taking this risk, um, obviously I'm still blessed to have some safety nets, right? But, I felt like if I don't try this now, when will I? And
Right.
so I'm taking a chance on me, and I'm grateful for the people who've, signed up with me, and, who are my early clients, who are taking a chance as I try to really, help them, because, that's really been my passion over the past few years outside of work, is just really trying to like elevate and give exposure to a lot of these brands that I feel like everyone should know about. And so I'm really excited to kind of take my passion and really put it into this company, and really try to fuel these brands and entrepreneurs to the places where I feel like they need to be.
Awesome. So welcome to the other side.
Thank you.
As I now am 1 year into coming to the other going on your side, your former side of the universe. Um, the best advice I can give to you is that no is a sentence.
Yeah,
Because
that.
as an entrepreneur, oftentimes you will get well, I should just do this because it's great for exposure, blah, 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 but they're going to work me to the bone. The answer is no.
Right.
Like, don't make the mistake I made, where it's like, oh, I'll just keep doing this because like I'm trying to like grow from it and blah, blah, blah.
Right.
Say no. And it's a sentence.
Yeah.
What your value is, honor your value. And the clients who want to pay your fees will be there
Yeah.
and will not be the ones that waste your time.
You're right. I mean, and I think that's the one of the biggest struggles, right? Coming from corporate and kind of undoing some of the things that.
Deprogramming.
Right. No, it really is, right? Like a reprogramming, a resetting, all that stuff, and I feel like, starting this firm is helping with that, because so often like we're used to like putting 150, 160, 200% into all that we're doing for other people, right? And for, the benefit of a bigger company. And so sometimes it's hard to undo all that, right? And to realize like you have to create boundaries, especially when you're working for yourself, because you could work all day and all day, and I'm not saying that I don't do that because I do, I'm still trying to like work through, really setting boundaries so I have time to just like dream a bit and take some time to like, you know, think and ideate, right? Before my kids come home, but that is beauty too. It's like, I'm doing this so I also have some more flexibility, to be with my family, to be with my husband and kids, spend more time with them. But also, my parents are getting older and live in Toronto. So, having that flexibility to see them more as well, as well as my other extended family. So, mother-in-law and all that. So, that's what kind of drives me. And I have to keep that at the forefront, especially as I'm trying to grow and establish myself, still realizing like, I don't have to run that race that so many of us are used to running. you know.
You don't have to. Like that race is just, it's the one of the lessons, like, again, I've learned, and I've learned. And now it's like, yeah, it doesn't have to be this hard. We don't have to do all this. We don't have to be a superwoman. Like, no.
No. And I think, like the pandemic taught us a lot. Or, it taught us like so many of us, like sort of, what's important. And my thing is like I didn't want to drain myself anymore, to be honest. I was also really burnt out. I like I said, like I've been working since I was 8 8 or 9,
Like, yes.
with my little like, with my, I was saying like with my little paper bank book, trying to looking at my deposits, right? Looking at like how much I'm making, it's been nonstop since I was 8 9 years old. And we're part of the Gen X generation, right? Like where our parents were in industries for many years often, right? And so I, at like 40 something years old, ended up being someone like I couldn't believe, like who was working somewhere for 20 plus years, And so I want to be the example for my kids that like, no, you don't have to work for someone else for that long. I want you to be able to like have the freedom to do different things, and that's what I honestly, I'm inspired by so many of like the Gen Zs who are starting their own stuff before, they even leave high school, And so it's not a big deal when they get to their 20s or 30s to be on their third, fourth business. And so for me, like, at 46 years old to say, okay, I'm going to start this company and I'm going to go through the growing pains and the humbling, maybe rejections and things, things like that. Like, no matter how it goes, I'm just proud of myself for doing something that I only sort of dreamt of all these years.
And you'll be awesome at it. I mean, because you're going to be awesome at it because you have all the things that you need. You are intellectually curious. You want to do good work, and you have a great network. That's kind of all you really need. I mean, I think it's funny. Like folks always say, "Well, I just admire how Gen Z is going to do all this stuff," and I'm like, I am cautiously optimistic.
Right.
As an elder millennial, I feel like, I kind of feel like I get that lots of folks think that the Gen Z folks have it all figured out, but I do also think that like us millennials, because we lived in the digital and analog world, we actually do see the unnecessary of complexities, because it's one thing to be out of toxic situations. It's a whole other thing to think everything is easy.
Right. You're right.
And I think sometimes because, if you're the generation that doesn't know what dial-up meant, who didn't know what it meant to go to the library to get a book and then go read the book and then write a report about it, she'd actually have to sit there and think about it versus having ChatGPT write your essay for you.
Right.
Like those skills are necessary. I've seen it as a manager. I see it where I'm like, y'all couldn't figure this out. This took 2 minutes.
Right.
You need to just think about it for 2 seconds and not try to look up a digital solution for this. This is literally pick up the phone. Or like when I tell people to pick up the phone and call people, what do you mean? Like, don't email them. I was like, these are smaller vendors. Just call them.
Yeah.
It's been a situation. I guarantee you, if you call them, they'll probably be able to knock it out. They're like, what? So,
Different era. I mean, we had to have patience, but like you said, I mean, it pushed like the curiosity piece. You had to dig. You
yeah.
had to like research. You had to figure out how you find the answer, you know? And so you're right. Even though I'm not a millennial, Gen X, but I understand millennials. So I feel like
Yeah.
I identify as well.
Yeah. I stopped me being a grumpy millennial. It's just like I just realized I oftentimes it's funny because like folks will ask like, well, how could you do that? I was like, because like I know how to talk to people. Literally,
Yeah.
this is what I do. And
Oh,
like, you
yeah.
don't talk. It's like you're at your
And
phone.
yeah, and that's so important. And that's what I, tell people all the time. And not just younger people. This is like older people too. Like, relationships is what has gotten me through my career and my life, maintaining, authentic and organic relationships with folks, right? Not always trying to connect with folks because I think about what they can do for me, but just being curious about who they are as people, and especially when you actually get along and stuff like that, it just makes it easy, right? And you'd be surprised how many people will want to work with you, will want to do things for you without you even asking, and I think that's sometimes the tough part for me. It's like the asking piece because I don't want to ask, I don't want things to seem like it's transactional, but I think especially for young folks coming up, I think that's a skill that they're going to have to work hard at, right? Especially with, digital being at the forefront for them, they're going to have to, understand what it's like to just walk into a room and have to figure out how to talk to people, that you don't know
How to talk to people, how to small talk.
how to small talk, all that stuff. And, and I think that's a skill that I think, especially as Black people, that we have, like, because we have to adapt everywhere,
Yeah.
in any situation. And it's like, and it's actually sometimes it's sad to think about how early that becomes easy for us, especially if you grow up in an area where there are not that many people that look like you, how quickly you learn how to have that small talk, how you learn how to like figure out what are the things that bring us together, right? Or that are some common ground that can allow us to, to have a conversation, or, maybe deep down for them to see us like everyone else, which is sad.
We're normal human beings. Please don't kill us.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Or to change people's perception, right? Like, especially when I say I'm Canadian, sometimes it's this big whole
There are Black Canadians? What?
Right.
You know about hockey? Like, shut up.
All right. It's, or it's like, okay, well, like, where were you born? I'm like, Montreal. Where were your parents born? Well, they were born in Guyana, not in Canada, but I'm still Canadian,
I'm Canadian.
And so that's sometimes even, I think sometimes just even, me coming to the States was also, I think, allowed me to see my parents even in a different light, them kind of, they actually moved from the UK to Canada, but just imagining them having to like, start their lives over in this other place. And even though Canada and the US are close, it was still like a bit of a culture shock,
to come England. Oh yes.
Yeah, but and to come from, help me understand a lot of what they went through. Because I mean, I was even closer, kind of just, coming from Canada to the US, but then having to really make my mark in an industry in a country where I didn't really have any connections really, so I had to work even harder, to try to build those bridges with people, because, me staying here really relied on that, because if I lost my job too, it's like I had to leave the country. So I think that was also like my drive to also always be working harder than anyone else, to be honest.
Yeah, it's funny. I mean, we've talked about it before. It's like, when you have Caribbean parents who then go to England and then decide to either go to Canada or the US, and how because of the England stop, your experience ends up being just drastically different. And it is, it's funny, like as I talk to more and more women in business, especially when I'm doing 29 days, like how many of us have this similar experience where it's like, oh yeah, I was the only, so I'm gonna have to figure out a way to make friends real fast.
Yeah,
And what do I have to do? And how do I have to sort of be like the plug, the whisperer, the one they can count on, the one that they want to be friends with?
exactly.
So that like it's sort of like, diffused any potential foolishness.
Yeah.
Um,
But that's so true because and maybe that's also what drew me to like just being so obsessed with like pop culture and music and fashion and finding things out first because that was currency. I could come to school and say, "Hey, did you know that this person's coming to town or did you know this or X, Y, and Z?" And that's something that's like always stuck with me. I always love, kind of putting folks on to like something new and interesting like that I think will benefit them. Um, and it's funny like that you said that because I can see that tie.
Yeah, it's really bad. Again, somebody needs to write a book about it, not me. Because I don't think it's one of the things I think we don't talk about it enough. Like there's a different experience. I talk about a lot in podcasts. Different experience if you have Caribbean parents of a certain generation who emigrated to like England or Canada, and you were born in either England or Canada, and so you spent some of your formative years there, and then you're in the States. Your experience is drastically different.
Yeah.
And it's not that it's better or worse to anybody who was born in the
Hmm.
US. It's just different.
Right.
And as a result of that, it would be very interesting to see how that gets properly examined in terms of like how we can work together versus folks looking at it as like, well, one is better than the other, or that
Exactly.
makes you more or less black if because you had that other experience. Um,
Right.
so it is so fascinating and a lot to learn from each other is what I always say.
Definitely.
Looking back on all the kind of awesome stuff you've done, Andrea, what do you think you'd tell 18-year-old Andrea?
18-year-old.
Hmm.
Mm. Oh, I would tell her um to keep her head up, and that everything would be okay. Because I feel like I remember being 18 and just not being sure about like what was next. So like I mean that was around the time I was doing my internship and stuff like that, but just so uncertain about, kind of what was next. So I feel like I would tell her, you know, take the risks, you know that you're good enough. Um push through. you know, um just a lot of that confident stuff that I'm still telling myself. But I wish some of it I knew even earlier, right? Because I think you know, my trajectory, I feel like everything happens. I know people say this for a reason. I truly believe that. But, I had aspirations to be in fashion and I had, not a great experience with a fashion internship coming up. And that's sort of like, I was just like, okay, that's not for me.
Is that not my nope, no man.
And I pushed it aside. Right. And I think about that. Oh, like, man, that one experience I just was like, okay, yeah, they're right. Like, this is probably not for me. And so, I feel like I would really not take other people's opinions or even some of those bad experiences and make them, really kind of shape what I want to do or what I don't want to do. So I think I just instill a lot of confidence in her and give her hugs. But, yeah, because I think about 18-year-old me and I'm thinking about my 10-year-old daughter who's going to be there soon, you know? So it's what I'm trying to instill in her and my son right now.
Awesome. Love it. So obviously you're in a new season and you are starting something brand spanking new, diving headfirst in and trying to sort it all out. So what do you do for your self-care?
So I've started working out again, which is like a big deal for me because I feel like I put it on the back burner, especially in the past year or so. And I love running, so run some races. So even though I wasn't training and stuff as much as I should have over the past like year or two, like running 5Ks, 10Ks, sometimes half marathons. It still brings me so much joy because I love that the running community. Um, and really like music brings me joy. So when I can like put on my headphones and just like zone out to some good dance hall or some good soca or hip hop or whatever, that brings me joy. And then just, being able to have some time, honestly, just some silence and alone time is nice for me.
Peace and quiet. I'm going to leave you the hell alone.
Even if it's for 10 minutes, 15 minutes, or, like so often just sitting in the garage for an extra 20 minutes, finishing a phone call or just like listening to something, that brings me joy. So I try to find a little bit of peace every day.
I like that a lot. Okay, so you're listening to music. So does that mean did you also lose your mind when the Beyonce tickets got released and then was
Yes.
seconds?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I registered, so I'm sure they're probably all gone. So Monday will be my day to try to get some. So I did. I like registered right away. I mean, I would love to go. I'm not trying to like pay a mortgage. I
Yeah,
believe that it's gonna happen. So we'll see. We'll see. We'll see. I'm trying
yeah.
to get either for Atlanta. I saw she just added an extra show here and like Houston and a few other places. If it doesn't work out here, maybe Toronto. So we'll see. I'm
Yeah,
trying.
we're my friends and I are trying for London. We're like, it
Oh
will
yeah.
be easier to go
Oh
for
yeah. No, and I saw so many like, folks giving that tip on Instagram and on social, just like, listen, it'll be cheaper for you to like pay for a flight to get over there
Oh yes.
and get a good seat for as much as you might pay here in the US. So I think like if I could go, I would, but I'm going to London a bit after she's gonna be there. So, but
Yeah.
yeah.
I could theoretically make it work for those dates. And so I've pre-registered too. And obviously I'm calling up all of my hookups and be like, hi.
That's where relationships come in. It's like, hey,
It's like, friend, like,
please.
how, like, again, I have helped you all. I never asked for anything. This is the one thing I'm asking for. I need 6 tickets.
Right. But yeah, that would like fill my soul, not break my soul if I could see it. But
Oh,
yeah,
I love it. That
I'm
was
hoping. I'm hoping. We'll see. But I have faith. I feel like it's gonna work out. It's gonna
well,
work
don't
out.
worry.
For
It'll
the
fill your soul, and
yes.
you will be very cozy, and
Yes.
and it will be as if it's a alien superstar in your backyard.
Exactly. Because I keep reposting the meme and talking to my friends about like she told us to quit our jobs.
Right.
And I did last year. So like exactly at that time. So I feel like
Yeah.
it's
I was like, Beyonce, be gentle with those tickets because you did tell us.
right. Right. But again, yeah, it would be great. I mean, and she's someone, I mean, she's an inspiration. She does things on her own terms, takes her time, takes a break, and then comes back. She'll be out, and for a little bit and then go back to what she's doing, behind the scenes. And so, I think that's the goal for so many of us to be able to have that freedom.
Oh yeah, I mean, she's excellent at it, but the queen of it is Sade.
Oh yeah. Oh
I love it. So I was like, it's been 20 years. Okay, maybe I'll come out some new music. All right, maybe. And then we're like, oh my God. And then she goes away.
yeah. And I'm so glad I had a chance to see her.
Same. Oh my God. I
She
saw
was
her.
so incredible live.
So incredible live. I want to say, I can't, was it like whenever she last toured, I got to go Madison Square Garden to see her perform. I don't remember how I got the tickets, what happened, but I got the tickets and I was just like enthralled the entire time. Everyone was singing along and
Yeah. Oh
the
yeah.
keyboard
She's
was rock and we was like, oh.
so beautiful. I mean, I loved her growing up because I felt like the big forehead solidarity, you know. And so she's, incredible. But again, like you said, someone who's able to like kind of retreat, do what she's got to do behind the scenes and then come out when she needs to or when she wants, right? And so I think that's what so many, especially like post pandemic, it's like, we want to be able to write our own rules. And so, that's what I'm trying to do right now.
I love it. I love it. Now, last question for you. Do you have a give and your ask of the audience?
Oh, well, a give is, I feel like one of my superpowers is connecting people, and I love that. So, feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm always love meeting new people, and if there's anything I can do to help, in whatever way, like please feel free to reach out. You can also reach out to me by email at andrea@theacbgroup.com. And then my ask right now is for honestly prayers and and some good vibes my way as I start this journey. And then if I happen to like end up in your DMs or end up in your email, your inbox or your LinkedIn DMs, if you would just, answer my message, that would be amazing. But yeah, for right now, I mean, honestly, just truly like just all the good vibes and prayers as I embark on this new journey.
Awesome. You were going to be amazing, Andrea. I have no
Thank
doubt whatsoever. As I knew you would be. It took us a while to get you on this podcast, but I'm so glad you did
Yes.
because it was such an awesome conversation. We'll
Thank you.
all the details about your new endeavor. Hire this woman, uh, like pay her what she's worth. Um,
Yes.
in the show notes, so you can connect with her about the ACB group and helping you promote your businesses. And you just absolutely wonderful. I adore you. Thank you
I
so
adore
much
you
for being
too.
part of
You're
Financial.
welcome. Thank you for having me and thanks for the patience. How
No
long this
problem.
took. But
Awesome.
I'll just say this as the last thing too. It's like because sometimes there's so many of us that like to live in the background, which is what I was talking about. So I'm forcing myself to also do the uncomfortable things. And like you asked me this week, and I said I can't say no to you, and I just said yes. So I appreciate you for like pushing me out of my behind the scenes mentality. So thank you so much, Laura.
Of course. I was like, I have to. If she doesn't do this here, I'm gonna unfriend her on Instagram.
Oh, well, thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And that is our show.